It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. What's up? What's happening? I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen. Hope you had a great holiday weekend. Before that holiday weekend, the Commanders had their third and final OTA practice of the first week of phase 2 of OTAs. I feel like you should like a decimal system. It's like 2.1.3. That's what the practice was. Phase 2, week 1, practice 3. We'll go over that and some emerging themes on this new Eric Bieniemy led offense. And then I'm very excited for this. We're going to play a little over-under at the end of the show. Take a look at some of the offensive statistics and predict them. Our producer, Nick, is playing the role of line maker. He gets to be the house. Logan and I will place our bets, and sometime next January, we'll see if we're right. So that is the plan for the pod today. Wherever you're watching or listening right now, would love it if you subscribe or follow. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button. So far, so good on this here podcast. All right, Logan. OTA number 3. What did we see in that third practice, or what did you see in that third practice last Thursday?
Well, I think up till the third practice, the offense had been looking pretty smooth, right? We had talked about on our podcast last week how everyone looked in sync. Everyone looked pretty sharp. But then third day is team blitz. So team blitz for any offense is usually it can be a little dicey, because especially with a new offense, because you're learning offensive protection rules, you're kind of learning side adjustments, you're learning protection checks. And I think the offense looked fine, but that was probably the worst, worst is a strong word, but the least efficient period of the week. They had some issues in terms of who are we going to? Is that my guy? Is that your guy type of thing? Holding the ball a little bit too long at the quarterback spot. You can tell the defense is putting in some new stuff. And, I just think that's life in the NFL, good days and bad days. And I think, I was talking to Jack Del Rio in the hallway, and he's like, you definitely want these practices to feel split, right? To feel pretty even. And, up until this point, we've kind of been saying, the offenses looked unexpectedly good. And this is, I think, a day where it kind of comes back to earth a little bit. Not in a bad way. It's part of the growing process as an offense. But I think that, team blitz is tough, and it's tough for everybody. But I do think in terms of the complexity of what they have in right now, I'm so impressed. Like each time I watch practice, I'm like, man, I can't believe they've got this in. I can't believe they're doing this formation already. I can't believe they're checking these protections already at this point of the year. So I even though it was kind of a rough day in terms of execution, and it wasn't bad. It just wasn't as clean as it's been. Right. I still think it was pretty positive, because they have so much formational, so much personnel, so much kind of protection stuff in right now. I don't know. I'm just really impressed with what the offense is doing, even though it hasn't been great. So,
yeah, I think it's important to point out, right, when you talk about these blitz periods and things like that, those are the game-changing type of plays in an actual game, right? Yeah. It's really easy, relatively speaking, to execute on first and second down when teams are playing basic coverages. Like if you're playing cover 3, although as we talked about with Matt Ryan a couple weeks ago, teams are doing this less and less. There's a lot more junk, if you will, defenses, things that are not as clean read for the quarterback. But you're still going to see a lot more of like, oh, that's cover 3. If it's cover 3, I know what to do with the football. Now I just got to make the throw. Like you see the clean execution far more often, especially in a practice setting, because the answers are far more straightforward. If this, then that. But what blitzes do is they mess with those rules, and you can junk it up. And part of the reason you do that is a defense, and you don't do it necessarily on first and second down, as we talked about on this podcast before. But as our audience continues to grow, hopefully either a good refresher or something new for some of the new folks, like, when you play your basic defenses, you also have run fit assignments. And when you're blitzing, you are often not worried about that. That's why you blitz in passing situations, because if you run against a blitz or if you run in those situations, you're likely not to achieve the desired outcome, most commonly a first down. It's 3rd and 8 or whatever. And so when the defense doesn't have to worry about not leaving a giant gap for a running back to run through, they can do things in pass coverage and obviously with blitzers that they just can't do in your normal, fair, if you will, situations, your balanced situation. That's a much better word for it. Your balanced run pass potential situations. So it is unsurprising that obviously an offense is going to have more trouble with that, because for once the advantage flips to the defense based off the strategy. And it's up to the offense to make a play. And when they haven't had practice doing that, and they're seeing things for the first time, there's no film study, there's no nothing that they've done, there's no chance they've seen that look before, then it's obviously going to be difficult. My question, Logan, to you would be, how much of this is also just the new personnel? Is it the Sadiq Charleses and the Chris Pauls struggling? How much would be helped, if obviously Cornelius Lucas is a good swing tackle, but if Charles Leno was there, you have some pieces that are not quite in place yet, and obviously you have an offensive line group that is played 3 days of OTA practices together, and it's not even the starting group. So how much of that is something you can attribute to that versus kind of bigger issues, again, issues being a relative term because of where we are in the calendar?
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think maybe I oversold like how poorly they did. I think, for this offense, like they did a good job. There wasn't a lot of, I think maybe there was one or two missed assignments, but there wasn't a lot of free runners. It wasn't like a total meltdown. And while you were talking about the advantage that goes to the defense, I remember the first day they did blitz pickup in last year's OTAs, and it was a non-tenable day for the offense. Like they just couldn't execute anything. Like there were free runners. They do that thing. We saw it last year against Wink Martindale, where they're always working that squeeze protection, and they're getting free runners, and guys are just, the quarterback, has no hot answer.
All of a sudden, Kayvon Thibodeau is unblocked off the edge at your own 10-yard line.
Yeah, and so I think that is like last year you saw that, and it was like, oh my gosh, like this is bad. This is really bad, and that was not the case yesterday or Thursday last week. It was like, this isn't as sharp as it's been the past 2 days, but at least you can see they have solutions to these blitzes. They have answers versus this like overload. The ball's out of the quarterback's hands at a reasonable time. They have this screen. There was just answers. And so even though it wasn't super clean, like any blitz day, even in season, you're kind of like, oh man, that's that one blitz where we have to double bump this and I got to slide down, or I should have checked that as a quarterback. But I think it was just, I came away from it being like, oh my gosh, like they had answers. Unlike last year, with a different offensive coordinator at the helm, where it was just like they had no answers. The defense totally dominated the day. And to me, that was like the paradigm shift of OTAs, where it went from like the offense looked pretty good to like the offense looked bad. And so I don't think that was not in the cards on Thursday. In fact, like I think the checks, like, so we're in an empty personnel grouping. The quarterback identifies that there is some type of overload pressure. He checks the protection. The tight end comes in and slides in. Now you have a six-man pro and an empty look, right? Just like an easy thing. And so obviously there's a lot on Sam Howell's plate. There's a lot on the tight ends and the running backs plate in terms of adjustments and things they have to do. And also understanding versus certain pass concepts, you have hot solutions. And again, that was something in the old offense, which again is very similar schematically, that they didn't have a lot of. Like, it's like, oh, we're getting an overload pressure. Like the ball needs to be out. There's no answer here. I can't get the ball out. Now there are opportunities to get the ball out quickly, and it's about guys making plays when you got to make them. And it's tight windows, and it's not, it's not like this wide open, first and second down opportunity like you're alluding to, because it's third down. It's tough, but I think I don't want to oversell that it was like a super negative day for the offense. It just wasn't as clean as the first 2 days, where the offense, I was surprised at how clean it was, because it is a new offense and it just looks so sharp. So I think it's like, compared to the last 2 days, it wasn't as sharp, but compared to last year, OTA 3, it's like light years ahead. So just to kind of give some context there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's amazing what happens when the infrastructure's there. Like when you build a good house, it won't fall down. Like, wow, who would have thought? How did the quarterbacks look? How did Howell look? How did Brissett look?
Yeah, I think Howell, that was probably his roughest day. And again, it's like we're splitting hairs here in terms of rough day. It's
maybe we phrase it like it was his third out of 3 days, right? Like the other two were better, but it's, he got like A's the first 2 days or B's or whatever he got, and it's a C on Thursday, as opposed to like, man, big old fat F.
Yeah, no, and again, it's the toughest day. Team blitz is tough. Like it's just a really hard day to be successful. And he made some really he made an excellent throw. So Eric Bieniemy does a good job, and the Kansas City offense does a good job of creating 4-man overloads. And so, if you think about it, the majority of overloads you see in the NFL are like a 3 receiver side and a 1 receiver side. And they found ways with motion and using the back to get the 4-man overloads. And so basically what they did is they lined Jahan Dotson up in the backfield and then had him run a seam from the backfield and had the back run like a wheel-ish, but to the right side of the formation. So everyone's running to the right. And the defense actually did a pretty good job matching it. And I thought, man, where's he going to go with the football? And he delivered a perfect hole shot to the outside receiver. So you got the tight end, Jahan, and the running back kind of running underneath on these seams. And then he delivers it over the top where the safety hasn't pushed through all the way in a very, very tight window. And I thought, man, that is an elite NFL throw, an elite NFL read. That's a big boy football. And then at the same time, like in blitz period, he held the ball a little bit long on an out route to De'Ami Brown, which was an excellent throw also, but understanding like, hey, it's blitz. I got to get this out a little bit sooner, right? I can't hold it. I can't see the throw the same way. Had a couple balls batted down, had a couple drop balls just because there's pressure in his face. He's falling away, trying to get the ball out. But in terms of like the high end stuff, you're like, wow, like he did some really good stuff. It's just like he's also contending with kind of, it's blitz, man. There's going to be rushers. There's going to be pressure. Right. Dealing with some of that stuff. And then I think Brissett, the thing that it continues to surprise me is that he holds the ball a lot longer than I thought he would hold the ball. I thought he would kind of have this, he'd have this intellectual leg up over Sam, but he doesn't seem to. He just he has to see the throw. And again, he's working with the 2s and the 3s. So maybe you feel like you need to see those throws a little bit more because you don't trust those guys to be at their spots quite the same way. But, he makes nice throws, but again, there's a deliberate kind of deliberateness to the game that I was not expecting to see. But I guess when I look back on the stuff that he did in Cleveland, even his good stuff, it's off of play action. It's where he can see the throw. It takes a little bit longer. And I thought that was play design, but I think that actually might just be how he plays, So I think Sam looked great, minus a couple things. It's, again, team blitz. It's a tough day. And I was a little I continue to be surprised by kind of the deliberate approach that Jacoby takes with regards to throwing the football.
And then defensively, obviously, they had their best day. That's kind of how the math works. Again, I'm not great at math, but that's math I can math. If they had a rougher first 2 days, again, everything's relative here. But how did they look, and kind of cohesiveness of the unit coming together, and also again, what were some of the positional things that you see and how they're rotating, especially their DBs. The front seven's hard because Jamin's out right now. He got an offseason cleanup. I think it was his knee. So he's not in there right now. I guess Barton is probably playing, which seems important.
That's been an interesting rotation, is that, it was Barton the first day, and then now it's been Mayo the past couple of days. And I guess it would make sense to me that it'd be Mayo on the blitz day because he's the guy who's been in the defense the longest. He knows the checks. He knows what to do. And again, that's probably a little bit of
let's say at the Mike spot.
The Mike spot, yeah.
Okay.
And then Kalik, it looks like Kalik's been out or he's been hurt because he had a really good first day, and then I haven't seen him kind of pop the same way. It's been Eifler, number 50, who I don't know on the roster. I got to look his name up. But those are the types of guys you see in there with Cody Barton and Mayo. So a little different. Obviously, a lot of nickel. The guy from Illinois, he's been Quan has been doing most of that kind of nickel work, and he's done a great job. Really tight windows, really good feel, like for route concepts and stuff for a guy who's only been here for a couple of days. So that's always been impressive. I think Emmanuel Forbes has done a nice job. You just see kind of how he's so ready to kind of read the quarterback, read the receiver's timing, and kind of break on the football and make tight window throws. He hasn't got an interception outside of the rookie minicamp, but he's created tight window opportunities. The 2 safeties, Percy Butler and Forrest, are, I don't know, man, they have this energy that they play with that is a lot of fun to watch. And so that gets me really excited when I see those guys on the field together, because it's like they're not always in the right position, but they are missiles to the football. You know what I mean? And I just like that energy from the defense. So that's been cool. Defensive line rotation, nothing too crazy there. I think they're kind of bouncing in between, on the defensive end, for example, like the first day it's FA and Casey, and then now it's James and FA, and then it's Casey and you know what I mean. They're just kind of rotating through those edge guys. The two guys inside have been starting, Daron Payne and Allen, like as you'd expect.
Sure.
And then the guy that's flashed a little bit is Anderson as a pass rusher, the kid that they signed from Atlanta. He's kind of that 3-4 end, but he's playing 3 technique for us or for their Commanders. He's had a nice couple days of pass rush, but again, he's rushing against the 2s and the 3s. So hard to kind of determine, like, is that varsity level pass rush, or is that just because he's going against someone who's not quite as good? But I think overall,
Anderson.
Anderson. Thank you. I think the defense and one of the reasons they're able to do so well on the third day is because they're able to dictate to the offense a little bit more. They're able to kind of put more blitzes in, put more different coverages in. And I think the guys, even with the young pieces they have there on that defense, did a really nice job of kind of adjusting that stuff and playing good defense. And again, like last year when they had this blitz day, it was a non-tenable day for the offense. Like they just couldn't do anything. And that's kind of how this felt too. But I think the offense was a little bit more efficient, a little bit more play call, a little bit more effective from a play calling standpoint. So it wasn't quite this ultra dominant performance, but it was a very good day for the defense.
Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulson. So, Logan, one of the other things that you noticed from the OTA period is that there's a lot of stuff already in, a lot of positional groups, a lot of formations, a lot of combinations already installed in this offense, which I think is super interesting because it's like it kind of, to me, says this is a fundamental part of who we are, how we use personnel, how we create mismatches, as opposed to being kind of a bonus feature, if you will. It's fundamental to our offense. And thus, as we start our day one install, we're going to have guys lining up all over the place. We're going to use bunches. We're going to use clusters. We're going to use whatever other terms they use to describe, combinations of players, stacks. And, it's all a little different in each offense, but we're going to use all of it. What have you seen so far from that you like and that you think is interesting, and that you're allowed to talk about at this point in the offseason?
Yeah, I don't want to be too specific here, but one of the things, so I got a question for Command Center. And one of the questions was, who's going to be the gadget guy in this offense? Is it going to be Curtis or is it going to be Antonio Gibson? And I kind of came to the conclusion after watching Kadarius Toney in Kansas City that it's going to be Curtis Samuel, right? Because Curtis Samuel can play a little bit of running back. He can be in the slot. He can be the jet sweep guy. And I think one of the things one of the reasons it's more effective to have a slot receiver do it is because it dictates certain responses from the defensive personnel. And I'm not sure Gibson would give you those same responses. And so I think that's one of the reasons I think it's going to be Curtis. Now, I think a lot of people, like in the comments of the video, said, oh, well, like, why not have 2 gadget guys? And I do think that based on the first couple of OTAs, Antonio Gibson's role in the offense, especially as a pass catcher, is going to be a little bit bigger, right? So, like they're motioning him out to run slants. They had him run a couple choices. They had him run a couple wheel routes and let him kind of utilize that receiving skill set to make plays against lesser coverage players. So just because I don't think he's not going to be the jet sweep, we're going to motion him to the backfield and get a carry type of thing. He's not going to be that level of gadget guy. I do think his role is going to be expanded, right? And I think EB, like you sent me that thing of him doing that coaches conference on Twitter where he talked about you have to identify, the traits of your athletes and how best to maximize them. I think that's what you're starting to see in OTAs with Gibson. His role for sure as a pass catcher will be kind of what the media community and the fans have been calling for the last couple of years. Where like, hey, let's use that receiving skill set a little bit more. And I think over the first couple of OTAs, you've seen that, and that gets me really fired up. That I'm like, okay, great. They're finding ways to get him touches in the pass game. They're kind of seeing what he can do, and I think that's ultimately going to help the offense. But he's not going to be this. He's not going to be the gadget guy because he doesn't get the correct response from the defense, right? So if he's in the game and Curtis Samuel's in the game, they're going to match nickel. And so when I motion Curtis Samuel to run the football, we now have numbers in the run game because they're not going to adjust to a receiver in the backfield the same way they're going to adjust to a running back in the backfield. So I think that's kind of what I would say there. It's like, think about how San Francisco uses Christian McCaffrey. They use him like a running back. You know what I mean? Like he is a running back. Right. He's not this like reverse jet sweep. They get him screens, they get him slants, they get him goes, they get him good matchups, right? Because he is a good matchup weapon, but he's not the gadget element. He doesn't get a lot of reverses. He doesn't get a lot of, like kind of trick play type stuff. That falls to a different skill set. And I think in this offense, that probably goes to Curtis. But I definitely think of a more McCaffrey type role for Gibson in this offense for sure.
Yeah, which is great because that does mean you can start him in the backfield, motion him out, and have him do
Right.
wide receiver stuff, and you might draw a linebacker depending on what personnel group
That's
is
exactly
in.
right.
You put him and Robinson in the game together. They go with a base defense. All of a sudden, you run or you motion Gibson out of the backfield. He runs a choice route on a linebacker, and that guy's dead. Like that's easy pickings for Sam Howell. So
what they did the other day, which is exactly to your point, Craig, and I didn't bring it up, but they came out in 21 personnel and they motioned to not empty, but they had Alex Arma stay in the backfield as the running back, and then Gibson is the isolated receiver to the
Arma,
right.
the tight end fullback guy. For those that don't
He's
remember,
probably more of a fullback, but I think he fits that fullback role nice. He carried the football a little bit at Carolina. He can catch the football well. I think he's a very good, very like DY kind of fullback, Darrell Young type of fullback. And so they motioned him out to the right by himself in isolation. He drew a favorable matchup. They motioned the tight end out to the left in like this empty kind of ish spread look, and they threw a slant to him, and he made an excellent catch on the football, and he beat a corner. So I was like, that's what you're looking for from that kind of role. You know what I mean? It's not like it's just, can we find different ways to get him touches? And I think having a fullback, having tight ends, having all these kind of flex pieces allow you to do that a little bit more effectively.
Yeah, definitely. And then with Curtis, like I just laughed when people were like, "Oh, are they going to cut Curtis Samuel? Are they going to cut Curtis Samuel?" I was like, "No, this is the thing that they've been waiting for Curtis Samuel," which is hilarious because Scott Turner was with him in Carolina. But like, this is Curtis Samuel. Should be Curtis Samuel's dream role. He's a very solid like wide receiver who just lines up and runs routes and catches balls and is good after the catch and all those things. But you get a chance to maximize his skill set and get him in the backfield some run, get him some carries, whether it's, just halfback dives type of stuff, because he can run between the tackles or the reverses, the jet sweeps, all that kind of stuff. It works well with some of the RPO type of stuff that they want to do. You can just get defenses moving and shifting and create matchups, and it's what a modern NFL offense looks like. And what I love about Bieniemy and what they did in Kansas City and, what Kyle does and what Sean does is like, these are, again, fundamental pieces of the offense, not trick plays. They're not, they're not bonus features. Like, the offense isn't complete without it. And I think that creates a comfort level for the players because they understand how important it is. And it's not this, ooh, let's get excited, we finally called the trick play. It's like, no, this is just how we run the offense. And, as long as the challenge is, do you have the players who can mentally handle it? Because there's a lot of verbiage and there's a lot of concepts. And you've already talked about the last couple of pods, how much is in already, but it seems like they're handling it all right. And one thing that Rivera has said in the press conferences is, at least on the defense, they're going to do these installs like 3 times. I assume the offense is going to match. And so they did kind of an install in the classroom. They're doing this install now, and then they'll do it again in training camp. So hopefully, you have all this massive volume of plays and concepts that are second nature by the time the season rolls around. And then you can even build off of those when you get into your game plan specific stuff, but you have this wonderful array of options to create the matchups you want going into every week, no matter what the matchups are.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice way of putting it. This is just offense, and we haven't even talked about the tight ends yet, but I think that group kind of shows you, in addition to the Curtis Samuels, in addition to the Antonio Gibsons, just it shows you the way the NFL is going. So they get in 13 personnel, not a ton, but I'd say probably out of 50 plays in the practice, maybe 15 reps, which is a good amount, and they find it's not like they're running the football out of 13. It's like they're running their base concepts out of 13 personnel, trying to dictate certain responses from the defense and, finding ways to get Cole Turner on a drag route or a corner and have, Logan Thomas run this big out, you know what I mean? Like they're utilizing skill sets, and you're utilizing skill sets to create matchups ultimately is what you're doing. So it's not like, I think that's maybe a better way of looking at it, Craig, and you pointed this out. It's not a gadget guy. It's like, how do we get the best matchups here for our team based on personnel, based on what our personnel does well? And I think that's Matt, that probably seems like a little bit of a foreign concept, I think, to the fan base here, because like that wasn't exactly what Scott was doing. I know he was trying to do that, but it didn't come across that same way. So I would say that now we're kind of in the full swing of that, and that's why, to me, I think this feels so exciting, right? Is because you get like, I mean, Cole Turner, right? Just as an example, he's running with the twos the other day, but they motion empty and he runs a choice, and like he's a guy who can do that. He can run choice routes, and like last year, it was like if McKissick isn't running choice routes, like no one's running choice routes. And when you look around at the NFL, like teams that can get to that route concept in different ways, especially on third down, are more effective football teams. And so now you've got Gibson running choices, you've got Curtis running choices, you've got Cole running choices, you've got Logan Thomas running choices, and all of a sudden it's like, now let's see who's the best at it and can put our offense in a good situation to be successful. But one of the ways you get to those different people doing that is have different personnel groupings on the field. So this is 2023. This is the new age of NFL offense, and it's cool to see. Obviously, they haven't got any of the run game stuff in yet because they're kind of prioritizing pass game, screen game. I don't think they've run one run play since the start of OTAs, maybe one. So
you said two the other day.
Yeah, two the other day. Yeah. But that's not a lot. Usually you'd have a team run period, and you'd be running probably between 12 and 15 runs a day. And so to not have that in, I think is really interesting. But I do think it allows for a sharpness and a dexterity in the passing game that is great to see at this point in the offseason, in conjunction with some of these different roles in the offense. So that's been really cool to see. You know what I mean? It's been really cool. And I think I get the sense that EB's kind of playing with some stuff a little bit too, to kind of see what he likes best. And, like guys have just really stood out in a dramatic way, which has been cool. So.
Yeah. Good way, by the way, to not get in trouble with the NFLPA and the league. Get 2 practices taken away next year. Right. Hey, let's just not run any run plays. Nobody runs into each other. We're just playing 7-on-7 football. Correct. But back to the matchups and stuff. Like Jay used to do this kind of stuff, and if the fan base thinks about some of the stuff they used to do with Jordan Reed and isolating the matchups, or Chris Thompson and isolating the matchups, but it was very. This sounds a little unfair to like what they did, because they were obviously tremendous offensive coaches, but like it's kind of elementary compared to the stuff that teams do now. Like it was, okay, well, we know if we just put Jordan out there, then we'll get this matchups, and it's set and it's static, right? Now it's like, oh, well, we're gonna use motion to do this, and then we're gonna use a shift, or we're going to start here to get this and then really mess them up, because then we change to that. And they've got to do a lot of communicating, as opposed to just let's stick Jordan Reed out and on the solo side of a 3-by-1, know that we're going to get a matchup that we like and let him run a choice route. That's effective. It works. But can you make it less predictable, thus making it harder to have solutions if you're a defense? And that to me is like the evolution of where we are now with this stuff, where you now would say, okay, if Curtis Samuel's the guy we want to isolate, instead of just going 3-by-1 and having Samuel be the one and giving him a ton of space, it's let's start him in a diamond formation on a 4-by-0, motion him across, or we're going to start 2-by-2 and then, motion someone away from him, and now he's isolated. Like there's just things that you do. And I think the last part, we talked about this at times last year, because teams did this to the Commanders, is if you can make a defense change what they're doing at the last second, there's a significantly elevated chance of success, because there's communication that has to happen. If they have a rule for 3-by-1 and a different rule for 2-by-2, and you jet sweep motion someone across, there's a good chance that half the defense is going to be playing their 2-by-2 rule, half the defense will be playing their 3-by-1 rule, and somebody's going to be wide open. That's how you generate busts. That's how you generate massive mistakes that create big plays. And so the more you can do that stuff and not just have to have guys win, the better. But also, you're talking about an offense that has a bunch of guys who can win. So it's why, if Sam Howell is good and if the O-line holds up, it does feel like this offense could be genuinely very good this year. But those are two massive ifs, and it's really going to come down to execution at the end of the day. But from a skill position standpoint and a schematic standpoint, I feel pretty good about that stuff. Unfortunately, I don't want to say like scheme is obviously high because it can elevate everyone else, but O-line and quarterback play can undo good scheme
Everything.
all day
Yeah.
long. So it's just a matter of ultimately getting to a point where they're crushing it in practice and then can carry that to the game starting in September.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point there with like the Jay Grudens and the Kyle Shanahans and the Sean McVays and the offenses they were running. They had to evolve, and this is like I think not. This is I guess this is kind of the evolution of that, right? Because like back in
Yeah.
the day, you said, "Oh, we got someone who's really good at this. Let's line them up here and just say win." And defenses were like, "Man, we're getting killed with this stuff. Like, how do we adjust?" And so they had to adjust, and offenses had to adjust. And I think this is where you get to kind of this stuff where it's like like little wrinkles on every single play and like little answers and little solutions here and there and the kind of the subtle evolutions of the quick game. So I totally agree, man. And it is exciting. It's exciting to see this kind of, I don't want to say it's overly innovative, but kind of like cutting edge stuff, like in terms of creative thinking about game plans. So that's really exciting. But like you said, man, it's like if Sam doesn't get it, if the O-line doesn't come together, which the O-line looks pretty good at the moment. Like, they look, and again, like I think I said this on
They're not in pads. It's May.
But in terms of like knowing what to do and being technically in the right spots, I just go back to last year because it's the closest thing we've got. And just how during this third day, it just was like obvious to everybody that wow, they're not even in the same league, and that they were a bunch of kind of seasoned guys, and to me it was more scheme than anything. And here now it's like okay, like this is at least this is a passable thing. So I don't know, I'm excited. I think the biggest test of the offseason though is going to be that joint practice against Baltimore. Like that's the biggest thing right now. Like because like defensively they seem to be progressing now. It's early, but they seem to be in a good spot. Offensively they seem to be in a good spot. I think that will continue throughout the offseason because I think EB's a good coach and Del Rio, say what you want about him, he gets those guys ready to go. The first thing they're going to have to do is go against Baltimore and just see if it's what it looks like versus a real team. So I think that'll be interesting for sure.
Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulson. And for the first time on the air, if you will, we are pleased to bring in our producer, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Nick Berlansky.
Hey! So what's going on, guys?
Nick, happy to have you.
Nick's always here, though, so it's weird to say happy to have you.
Yeah, happy to have you on the screen as opposed to just changing the graphics and sending us notes in the background, making this podcast better without letting the world see your beautiful bearded face. So now, Nick, you're gonna play Vegas odds maker here. So we have tasked you with a couple of different players, and because Vegas has not gotten around to actually making prop bets, apparently in May, you want to go bet on Sam Howell's over/under passing yards on the year? Good luck finding one. I'm sure a bookie will take you somewhere off the books, if you will. But all of the standard sports books do not have those numbers up. So we tasked Nick with creating them. So Nick, we said we want something Sam Howell adjacent. We want something Brian Robinson adjacent. Something and then for each of the three receivers. So those are the guys that we tasked you with. You get freedom on yards, touchdowns, if you want to bring in other players. So what do you got for us? And then Logan, our job is fairly simple. We just say over or under.
I want to start with somebody you guys have actually already talked about because you guys mentioned Curtis Samuel, what role he could be in 2023. His career high in receiving yards was back in 2020. He had 851. He finished last season with 656. So I want to know, does Curtis Samuel set a new career high in receiving yards over or under 850 in 2023?
What do you think? You want to go first, Craig?
No, actually, I don't.
I'm going to say under. I'm going to say he doesn't set a new career total. And I think and everyone's going to be like, what? Why? You just talked about how great the offense is. And I just think that's why. I think the ball is going to have to get distributed to Jahan, to Terry, to Curtis, to Gibson, to B-Rob, to Logan Thomas, to, there's a lot of playmakers. And when you look at EB's offenses over the last, Andy Reid's offenses, EB's offense, EB's involvement with Kansas City's offenses, people get a lot of touches, and there's not like a definitive like number one guy. And I think that leads to better offensive production. So I think he'll be very productive. I don't think he's going to be 800 yards productive. What do you think, Craig?
I agree. I'm going to go under on setting a new career high. It would not surprise me if that's around his number of total yardage,
Sure.
Because he can have some rushing yards as well. And look, you talk about total yardage. Could he bust 1,000 if he has, 180-yard run that boosts the total, or an 80-yard, reception somewhere in the year? Like, definitely. In a 17-game season, 851 yards is certainly on the table. I feel like that's like a good number, if you will. Obviously, he's got to stay healthy as well. But I tend to think that McLaurin and Dotson are going to be the guys that are pushing the totals. I could see Curtis with 5 or 6 touchdowns as well this year. Like, I think Curtis is going to have a really, really good year. But a really, really good year is somewhere around 750 yards, 6 touchdowns, 350 rushing yards, something like that.
And I think it's also important to remember he's the third receiver.
Yes.
And that doesn't even mean he's going to be the third receiving target at this point, right? Like, let's say Gibson starts balling out in training camp and he becomes a guy, hey, we got to get him more touches. Like, those touches are going to come from somewhere. And I think Jahan and Terry, like you said, are going to get the lion's share of that. But like, I didn't even mention on the third day, like Logan Thomas had some excellent catches against like DBs and corners, just using his big body to create separation. So obviously if Sam is kind of building that relationship now, like I could see his role being bigger than it was, last year. And then again, those touches have to come from somewhere. So I think Curtis is going to be very productive, very explosive, and kind of have these more flash plays than we saw last year. I think 850 is a lot of ground to make up given how dynamic this offense is.
Agreed.
The biggest surprise for me last year with the Commanders was how much Jahan Dotson actually found the end zone. Like, I watched Penn State, and the guy, listen, he has a knack for finding the end zone, but I didn't expect in his rookie year him to lead the Washington Commanders' entire team with 7. So my question to you guys, will Jahan Dotson score over or under 7.5 touchdowns in 2023 and improve on his rookie season?
I guess I got to go first on this one.
Ahead.
No, I never want to go first, Logan.
I'll go first. I'll take the bullet because I want to talk about it. Okay. I think under again also. And again, I think there's just so, like, when you look at the red zone, I watched all the red zone touchdowns last year for Kansas City, and they just find ways to get everyone the football, right? It's not like, obviously Travis Kelce's a big part of what they do in the red zone. And so I think Logan Thomas's red zone protection will probably increase a little bit. I think Jahan will be involved in that, but I think 7's a lot of touchdowns, man. I just think they're going to find ways to get different people the football. I think B-Rob's going to have a lot of touchdowns in the red zone. He's going to kind of siphon some of those off. So I would say under. And again, I don't think that means he's going to have a bad year. I think he's going to be very, 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 very productive. But I also think I think Logan Thomas, I would say Logan Thomas is going to be more productive. I think the receiving group in the red zone will be a little bit less productive, but I think in the field, the receivers' production from a yard standpoint will increase, if that makes sense.
So here's the guys who had 7 touchdowns last year. Tyreek Hill, DJ Moore, Jawan Johnson, T. Higgins, Devontae Smith, Gabe Davis, Christian Watson, Cole Kmet for the Bears.
Really? Wow, that's surprising.
Yeah, old Cole Kmet, tight end for the Bears, had 7. And then Jahan Dotson had 7 as well. They were all tied for 15th behind guys like Devontae Adams, Travis Kelce, Stephon Diggs, George Kittle, A.J. Brown. I will say Jerick McKinnon had 9 receiving touchdowns last year.
That is true.
So, someone, maybe Gibson's the guy who has 6 or 7 receiving touchdowns. But I think over 7.5 is a huge ask. And that's kind of the point here, is like, you're talking about being top 10 in touchdowns in the league. And considering you're the second receiver, considering how much they use the tight end in the red zone, considering the running back stuff that they'll do, whether it's Robinson running it in or Gibson on some choice routes and creating those matchups, I just think that's a hard number. 7 feels about right. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he touches that again, but I would have to, if I'm putting actual money on it, I think I'd go with the under.
These are good ones, Nick. Man, you put some time in, huh?
Yeah, Nick, you're also now muted, so
perfect, because that way we didn't talk over each other. That's yes. Exactly what I did.
Less editing for you.
Exactly. That was in my mind whenever I was talking. But no, these numbers are numbers that I could honestly see, though. And that's the thing with Brian Robinson's, which is who I want to go to next, because last year he only played 12 games as a rookie. He rushed for 797 yards, and everybody always loves to talk about the 1,000-yard rusher. So I want to ask you guys, will Brian Robinson rush for over or under 1,000 yards in 2023?
Am I going first?
I'm
You
going
want to go
over.
first? Yeah.
I'll go first on this one. I'm
You're going over?
I'm going over on 1,000. Here's the thing. 1,000 yards in a 17-game season is not that much. Like, it's obviously still impressive. And the biggest thing you have to do is stay available, right? But where's my phone with the calculator on it? I don't know where. Oh, there it went. I think it's like 70 yards a game or something like that. If you take 1,000 yards by 17 games, it's not even. It's 58 yards a game. And so if he has 120 yard game, he's now bought himself an entire game.
Was anyone even close last year
yards
in Kansas City's offense?
I can look that up real quick. But I think they want to be run first. It's not going to be Kansas City's, like, that's going to be the biggest thing in Kansas, or difference between Kansas City's offense and this one is, like, they wanted the ball in Patrick Mahomes' hand all the time. And I think they're going to not put the ball in Sam Howell's hands nearly as much. They're going to run the football. And I think Robinson's going to be the guy who does the most of that. So if he can average 65 yards a game, which again is not anything crazy, I think, he plays 17 games. He plays 15 games at 65 yards a game. He's pushing 1,000 yards. So yeah, I'm going over.
Yeah. I also think, though, like, philosophically, like, a screen game is such a big part of this, so does he lose 5 carries a game to screens? And, like, does that siphon off some of his rushing production? And again, like, I don't think anybody last year in the Kansas City offense was close to 1,000. And again, you're right.
Pacheco had 830.
830. And I feel like that's, if I had to put money on it, that's probably where I'd say. I think he's probably in
Here's
that
the thing, though. He only had 170 carries.
And I think B-Rob and Gibson and I think Christian Rodriguez. I think Christian Rodriguez is an interesting variable here. I don't think he's going to have a ton of touches, but I think he's going to have enough that it's going to be like, oh, he had 5 carries this game, and those are carries that are going to be taken from B-Rob. So I think like with all these guys, I think offensive production is going to be high. I'm thinking like 850, 900 is totally reasonable. I just think 1,000, because I think there's going to be games where he has 20 yards rushing. I just don't think it's going to be like this staple the way that it was last year, where he's getting 30 touches or he's getting 25 touches. I don't think that's going to be the same emphasis here, and I think EB's kind of alluded to that in some of his press conferences, where he's like, if we got to rush the ball 50 times a game, we're going to do it. If we got to throw it 50 times a game, we're going to do that. And I do think that that's going to lead to different people getting touches. It's going to lead to less of an emphasis. I know they want to be run first. They want to insulate the quarterback, but insulating the quarterback in this offense is different than it is in like a Kyle or a traditional offense, right? They insulate the quarterback by using quick game, by using RPO. And so some of those called runs are going to be passes. And I just think overall the volume of touches for the rusher is not going to be there the same way that it is in like last year, where it's like, we're running duo, we're going to run it 15 times. B-Rob gets every duo. We're going to run 5 counters. He's going to get those. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be like, hey, here's 5 RPOs. Here's a screen. Here's a jet sweep. Here's, here's like a whatever, here's like a zone read. Like those things are going to siphon touches from him. And I think they're going to go running back by committee, because I think they want all those guys to be healthy. So.
No, I don't disagree. I just would say that if he gets 20 yards one game, as 100 yards another, add those together, do the math, divide by 2, it's 60 yards. So,
but I also think Gibson's going to be more productive. I think there's going to be games where Curtis gets more touches. Like, there's a lot of people in this backfield that we want and that deserve, and we want to get touches for offensive success, not individual success. And I just think he's got a lot of people right now, a lot of people that will cannibalize touches, and a lot of offensive philosophy that'll cannibalize touches. Because on an RPO, like, for example, I remember in the Super Bowl last year, they ran, I think, 15 RPOs. I think Patrick Mahomes threw like 11 of them. They're all good reads, and those show up in the stat sheet for EB as runs. But Brian Robinson or Pacheco didn't get any of those touches. So that's kind of what I would say is like, I hope he gets 1,000. That'd be great. But I just think it's better for the offense if more people get the touches in different spots. So it's possible.
Don't disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't disagree. Still going over.
Okay.
Nick,
I'm
what we
going
got
over.
next?
This one was a little bit harder to figure out a number with Sam Howell, because not only did Sam Howell play one game last year, but Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke also split. So when I put those two together, Wentz and Heineke combined for 3,614 yards last season. I want to ask, do you think Sam Howell will throw for over or under 3,700 passing yards in 2023?
Someone's got to have the production, Logan. I'm going over.
Yeah, I'm going over here.
Like the thing is, as long as he, plays well, stays out there, Brissett doesn't replace him, and I anticipate, especially based off how this first week of OTAs is going, that's going to be the case. Then okay, fine. Your Brian Robinson RPOs that are called runs kind of, but can become passes. Well, guess who's throwing them? Those should be relatively easy completions. You have all these skill guys. You get the ball in their hands. You have, screen game. Fine. Those count as passing statistics. And so again, 3,700 in the 2023 NFL in a 17-game season in this kind of offense is not spectacular production. It's very, very good. So this is not an easy one. But as long as he stays healthy and is the guy running this offense, then yeah, I think 3,700 is in the cards. I'm going to go over.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm just trying to figure out where that would have ranked him as a passer last year. You know what I mean? Where that puts him. Because I remember
Mahomes had 5,250.
5,250, but I'm saying he's a top 15 guy with that stat line, right? With 3,700 from last year, if I remember
let
correctly.
me pull that back up real quick. Yeah, 30. Let's see. Jalen Hurts had 3,700. Yeah, Jalen had 3,700, and he was 10th in the league in passing. Rodgers had 3,695 and was 11th. So we are talking about a top 15 season guys but the thing is, a lot of the guys that are kind of in that next tier missed games, right? So Tua has 3,548, but he only played 13 games. Russell Wilson, even as bad as he was last year, 3,524, played 15 games. Derek Carr, 3,522, only played 15 games. Daniel Jones played 16 and was at 3,205. So that's one that gives you a little bit of pause, but they also did not throw the ball nearly as much as I would anticipate. Mahomes threw it 648 times, and Jones threw it 472.
Right. So, I mean, I my gut says over here. My gut says over, but I also know that it's tough for a young guy in a second year in a new offense to be a top 10 passer, and I think that's the thing that's the only thing that gives me pause. But I agree with you, Craig. I think that these touches got to go somewhere, right? And I think those RPOs, the screens, even the little stupid shovel passes they have in the red zone, those are yards. It's going to be easy for him. The amount of play action that they run, the amount of quick game that they run. I'm going to say over. If you would have said 36, I would have said over in 5 seconds. But 37, if he has 3,700 yards passing, they win 11 games, probably 12 games, right? I mean, if that's what we're talking about, they're
we're both saying over.
They're
that makes me question it more than anything.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Think about that though. That's the thing that gets me going. Is this real? Is this a tenable solution? And I know we're really high in the offense right now, but he's got to do it. You know what I mean? He's got to make these reads. He's got to make these throws. And I know he's physically capable of it, but we've seen a lot of dudes who are physically capable kind of fall a little short. So I think that number, I've talked myself into under. I'm going under. And again, it's just because I think it's just hard for a young guy versus NFL defenses to be a top 10 passer. I think it's entirely possible. Yeah. I think it's plausible. I think it's realistic in a lot of ways. I just think that's I'm playing his historical odds here a little bit.
No, it does make me rethink it for sure. And looking into it too, it's okay, is he going to have 450 attempts? That's a bit of a threshold. If he can get above that number, it feels a lot more doable. If you get to 500, it's almost, I don't want to say guaranteed, but
but it's very possible.
all the guys who threw over 500 attempts last year, except for Derek Carr, got it, and Carr also missed it by 180 yards.
Yeah.
So it just depends on how much they. In some ways, I guess I should go under because I went over on Robinson, right? If I think they're going to be a little more run skewed heavy, where Robinson gets the amount of touches he needs to get to 1,000 yards, then maybe that passing attempt total comes down.
And what if he's
But it
running the
just,
ball a little bit more too? That's the other thing. Like
yeah,
if he's doing a little bit more zone read, like if he's more in the vein of Jalen Hurts, from 2 years ago, like is that he'd still be very productive. He'd still be, a very extremely plus at the position, but I don't know.
right.
That's a lot of yards, and it's honestly it's getting me to rethink my B-Rob pick too, because I think if I'm saying he's going to be under, then those touches got to go someplace, and I think
Right.
B-Rob, like we talked about,
Well,
is going to sit
it's
there.
funny because
Okay.
I said over in part because of what you said about B-Rob, and now I've got you convinced the other way.
Yeah.
Played a mind game. It
Yeah.
was a long game, Nick. I did it. No. But it is the kind of thing that, 37, if it's going to take him being a top 10 passer in the league, like that feels wrong.
And
But
that's 11 wins. That's 11 or 12 wins right there for this team, I think.
yeah,
And again,
it
like,
also depends.
it depends on how he's taking care of the football too, but
Yeah. I
I'm
mean,
gonna
the
say
funny
I'm gonna
thing
say
is,
under.
okay, I'm gonna go under barely, but actually, you know what? I'm gonna.
It's
Because also,
May. It's May. We gotta be
I know.
optimistic.
Here's the thing, Nick. You said that number is based off Wentz and Heineke last
Yes.
year.
Yes.
I'm gonna go over. You combo. He can't have a better season than those two guys. What they did last year. Some of the stinkers they had
He
out.
plays all 17. That's
Some
what
of
I'm
the
saying.
stinkers.
Nick did an excellent job of picking a number that is believable while also hard to get to. You know what I'm saying? It's like
So he
it's a
did his
good
job
number.
as a Vegas line maker because
He did an
that's
excellent job.
exactly what Vegas tries to do.
It's
They got to
excellent.
coax you in, and then they take money from suckers like us.
The last one I want to talk to you guys about, and it's a little bit more out of the realm of possibility, but I could honestly see it happening because Terry McLaurin finished 10th in the NFL in receiving last year, 1,191 yards. To get into the top 5 last year, he would have needed 1,400. Does Terry McLaurin finish with over or under 1,400 receiving yards in 2023?
Well,
That one's easier.
If you're
That's a no.
Craig, yes, because 3,700
No.
has to go somewhere. Craig, you said yes. Someone's got to get those touches. It's going to be Terry. It's going to be Terry.
If Terry gets 1,250 and Jahan gets 1,000 and Samuel gets 700, I'm already at like 3,000. And then Logan Thomas
Then you got
gets
700
500
more to go. Like
Logan Thomas gets 500. De'Ami Brown gets 250 because he gets an 80-yard touchdown in week 3, and he's just got to get 170 the rest of the whole year.
it's a lot of yards, man. It's a lot of yards.
Robinson in the screen game, Gibson, 1,400 is a lot of freaking yards.
That's your guy, though. I thought you'd be like,
I love
yeah,
Terry. I am, but I think I think Dotson's going to have a monster year. Like, I think he could get, close to 1,100 and Terry's like at 1,250. Like, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. Something, like that. And also how they're going to use those guys. Like, how are they used in the screen game? How are they used in the quick game? How are they used in the deep, in intermediate games? Like, I just feel like, I feel like the ball is going to be too well distributed for one guy to get 1,400. I mean, Tyreek did it in Kansas City, but I don't think they had the depth.
He was more explosive. Yeah.
I don't think Terry's not getting as many long touchdowns as Tyreek did, in part because Howell's not Mahomes. And Terry, for all the things that he is not Tyreek. But 2, I don't think they had the depth of weapons that they had where they're going to be trying to get different guys the ball, and it's going to depend on the week. Like, Tyreek was the dude every single week. I think there's going to be some decoy weeks for Terry. So I'm going to say under.
Yeah, I want to say over because I like Terry a lot, but I just, again, and I think I've probably been a little bit pessimistic. I think I've gone under on all of these, but it's because I believe, like you believe, Craig, that there are a lot of touches to be had, for a lot of different people. And I think the other thing that's tough is it's still so early. So right now, if you look at it, over the first 3 days of OTAs, you'd say, man, the leading receivers on the team are going to be all the tight ends. And just because they've been heavily featured in the offense, but that's not always how it goes into the season. So, yeah, I'm going to say under. But again, I think it's just because I think the tight ends will have 1,000 yards between the 3 of them. I think the backs will have 500. I think Jahan will have close to 1,000. And I think Terry will be close to 1,000. Curtis will have another, 500, 600, 700, and you're right at 3,700 if that's what you're thinking. So it gets eat up real quick. So again, I think it's going to be under 37. But if that's the number you're shooting for, Gosh, if he had 3,700 yards passing, holy cow, man, this is going to be a fun year. This would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. If he's got 3,700 and Terry's got 1,400, yeah, this is a playoff team.
Dude, crazy.
That or they got whacked a bunch and they're just passing like crazy in the second half and just accumulating stats.
I mean, I think the other thing we haven't talked about
version
here, and maybe this will be the next time we play this game, Nick, but like turnovers, like that could easily sway that statistic the other way, right? It could go from being like, wow, this is a playoff caliber team to just kind of a middle of the road team if he's 60-40 on turnovers or something. Sam Howell I'm talking about. So it'll be man, that got me excited just thinking about that because it feels like a very doable thing, but you got to pump the brakes on that, because it's May. So
this is why people gamble. It's very fun, but Logan, we did it and we don't lose any money at the end.
That's right. So we should keep track of these and see how they turn out.
Okay, I'm sure we can do that. Nick can make a little document and keep track. Nick, thank you for your service, sir. Excellent job. You're welcome back anytime on the podcast you're on, every time.
Thank you.
That's Nick Berlansky, everybody. That's Logan Paulson. I'm Craig Hoffman. Thank you for watching or listening to Take Command. We are on YouTube, full episodes at 1067 The Fan. Clips on my page at Craig Hoffman. You can also catch me on the radio, Hoffman Show, 4 to 7. I've been at 4 o'clock for like a month and a half now. 4 to 7 daily on the Team 980 and on YouTube on the Team 980's YouTube page. All right, that's it. That's all. Thanks for watching or listening. Follow or subscribe if you have not, and we will see you later in the week on Take Command. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fan's YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do it.
Very, very smart.